Hi, and welcome to episode 160 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram. And today is Sunday, January 15th, 2017. It is a really bright sunny day. As you can see, there's some sunlight coming in. If it gets worse, I will try to close it off. I just sort of can't stand to close off any sunshine. It's been a really scarce commodity the last few weeks. So I did record a podcast last week, but I completely deleted it off my computer on purpose because I was just not in a happy place, a happy state of mind. Winter has totally gotten to me. I know, and we're going into the third week of January. That's what happens when we get snow and winter and cold kind of way before Christmas like we did this year. I'm just done with it. But anyway, we've got bright sunshine today. So I thought I will sit down and try to record again. And it'll be kind of a quick show. I don't have a whole lot to show you, but I do have some works in progress. And let me start out with those. Usually I show you this one kind of the first week of the month, and January, that was the week that I kind of went through sort of like my goals, things I wanted to knit on this year. So I didn't show you this, but it is my blue shimmer bohus. This is the bohus that I am working on this year, and you can see I'm doing this semi-traditionally. I'm doing the body on straight needles. It'll have seams down the side, and the sleeves will have seams. But it's going to be a cardigan, and I did the yoke in the round, which is different than kind of the traditional way of working them. So I'm this far on the back, and I have the whole front done. Well, the whole front down to where I will start to put a band of some sort. I'm not sure what I want to do for the bottom edges, the bottom band, and the cuffs and things. So I just put these stitches on a piece of scrap yarn and then went over to work on the back. So I'm about this far past the armholes, so a couple inches. You know, it's getting there. I'm trying to work on this a little bit every day. I have not done my rows sort of today, but I will. And I am loving how it's looking. The colors kind of in this very low light, like winter light. It's the light blue. I don't know that the camera will pick it up. The light blue looks that really icy blue, and it's just I'm really loving it. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the edges yet. I got plenty of time to think about it. So that is kind of something I'm knitting on all the time. And this week I wanted to get started on a pair of the Sobovator mittens, and I kept going back and forth and looking at yarn from my stash, and I looked at the all through the book, and I kind of have the patterns picked out that I want to use. I just couldn't settle on the yarn because really I knew what I didn't want to use stash yarn. I wanted to get new yarn. I want them to, at least the first pair, to be sort of very traditional Norwegian. And so I ordered some Ramalfino garn, and so that should be coming hopefully this week. And then I will get started on those. But I wanted sort of a small, like another little small project. I have this big sweater, and like I said, the winter has like totally gotten to me. We had, horrible like ice storms a couple times this week. My driveway has like 2 inches of ice on it, and usually that means it's here for the duration for the winter because, even like some of the kind of snow melt things have to be a certain temperature before they'll work. But this week it's supposed to warm up. We are actually supposed to get a January thaw, with temperatures in the 30s, which I know might sound cold to y'all, but to me, that sounds like spring. So while it was these horrible, gray, dismal days, I sort of took myself off. I didn't even want to like look at it. I couldn't stand to look at the outside. So in the kind of late afternoon, I would go off with a cup of cocoa or a cup of tea into the yarn room. And the first day, I just kind of went in there because I just needed to get away from what it looked like outside. And even if I could still hear the ice pellets hitting the window. And I was back there, and I when I did the yarn room tour, I think I showed you the drawer. I had a whole bunch of projects that I had sort of come across when I was organizing things. Most of them were started, or quite a few of them were started in Hawaii. They were projects started on vacation and things. And so I opened up that drawer and just grabbed a bag out, thought, I'm going to like work on these kind of one at a time and see about finishing them off. So the first one I grabbed out was this little bag, which is a kitchen counter crafter bag by Java Jenny, which just, the little cardinals just look like spring. And I have her little matching, what do you call these, needle holders? But I really like the way she does hers because she puts the one little snap way on the edge so that it catches, because I use two circulars, so it catches those in there and keeps them really, really secure. So I, picked up this project, and this is a sock that, this particular sock wasn't started on vacation, but it is a pattern that I kind of made up while I was sitting on the beach in Hawaii, which just remembering that helped kind of deal with the winter. But one of the times, I think it was maybe the third time I went, before we left, I couldn't really settle on a project to take along. And so I took up like a bunch of little of wound skeins of yarn, and I had like a shawl and I think a couple pairs of socks. And I had just gotten this book, which is A Knitter's Journal, which is a set. There's a couple different ones with different covers that Meg Swanson publishes, and they have graph paper and lined paper so that you can write notes. And I kind of took this along, and so for I think all of those little projects that I found, all the sort of starting notes are in here. So I looked up that, and I had like a little so I started a pair of socks in kind of using this stitch pattern and things. And then at some point, I think it might have been when I was doing the podcast, I bought this yarn because I wanted to do a different yarn. And this yarn is this. It's really pretty. That's kind of just what the colors look like. This is a Sun Valley Fibers yarn. I don't think she carries this base anymore, but I really like it. It was kind of back when, a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, like all the sort of indie dyers all came out with a BFL nylon sock yarn. And that's what this is. It's 80/20 BFL nylon. And it is, the color she was more Marine Life, which I don't even know if she dyes this color anymore, but it's really pretty. And I had sort of my chart drawn up that I kind of started charting it just for myself. And I had about half of a sock done. So I picked that up, and I had, I know like what needles I, put in there, and just started knitting on it. I've got the heel in already, and I got kind of just past the heel. I got to this point, and then I put the heel in. I put in a scrap yarn peasant heel, kind of afterthought heel. I don't know when that started being called an afterthought heel. When I learned to do socks and like red sock books and about heels and things, kind of putting a piece of scrap yarn in, that was called a peasant heel. It never was called afterthought heel. Was only ever when you just cut your yarn to open up a space. So, so I got to this point, and then I thought, well, maybe I wanted to do a little bit something different, with part of it. And so I just started the toe of the second sock. So one of these I will have to kind of go back and change. If I like the second version better, I'll go back and change this one. If I like this one better, I will, kind of rip this one back. So, and that's what I love about knitting is you can change your mind and you can do what you want. And I'm not in a rush to kind of finish things. To me, it's not a race. It's not like I got to knit this many socks and all that. Knitting's my hobby, and I just want to sit and enjoy it. And I kind of sat in the yarn room, and my yarn matched the room, and I had some pretty music on, and so anyway, that is kind of where that project is I'm working on. And then I started the swatching process for another project, another sweater. I have this yarn that I bought at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and it's coming out, it's washing out a little bit, but it's pretty close to like right there. And this is another BFL yarn from Sun Valley Fibers. I bought this from her last kind of fall, and I needed some green in my life. I had sort of kind of thought that I would work on this later on in the spring, but I just needed green. So I thought, well, I will just start to swatch a little bit. When I bought this yarn, I bought it kind of thinking I was going to do wicker work, which I can't think of the designer's name. It's a sort of yoke sweater with kind of a texture pattern in the yoke. It's really, really pretty, and I definitely want to do that design. But when I wound it and I started swatching, I started swatching some patterns from my favorite Japanese stitch dictionary, which were mostly kind of twisted stitches and lace stitches and those kind of things. And they looked okay. I just thought it needs more cables. I don't know. It just needed something. So then I just started, and the last couple nights I swatched this little bit, which has more about like a trellis kind of a cable. So I'm thinking about just like working something up and just kind of making this sweater. I have quite a bit of yardage, so I can do something with cables. I haven't done anything cabled for quite a while. So if you've watched the podcast before, you know there was something missing from the On the Needle segment because I finished my handspun sweater. So let me go get it and I will show you. So here it is. This is my Jonquil Wensley Dale sweater that I worked on for a good part of last fall, and it's been so long in the making. I started spinning the yarn, I think back in 2005, maybe 2006. So quite a while. I had the yarn finished for quite some time, and I would make little stabs and starts at starting a sweater and kind of think, oh, that's not right. I ran into a lot of problems because of how the yarn was not very consistently spun, and I actually knit an entire sweater and ended up hating it when I got it finished and ripped it out. And then I've knitted tried things double-stranded, and finally I have it finished. So let me stand up and try to show you the bottom of it. You're seeing the really pretty part, but so this is how it turned out. I'm like having problems. So anyway, it has this really pretty wheat ear rib on the cuffs and then the bottom and the front bands. This was the first sweater I've ever felt like I needed to put a ribbon kind of reinforcement on the button band. I'm using these Sheila Ernst glass buttons, which they're fairly good sized and they're glass, so they're fairly heavy. And the yarn itself is like a fingering weight, so it's kind of lightweight. So I was just worried that kind of all of these glass buttons would sort of weigh this down. And so I had this cute bee ribbon that I used, and I chose to sew it on with a catch stitch, which has the benefit of kind of allowing for a little movement, because you're putting a woven onto a knitted, stretchy thing. I thought it would benefit to, being able to move a little bit. The drawback with using the catch stitch is that it shows, you can put it on much more invisibly, but then it doesn't allow for the movement. As, even if it was going to show, as long as it was sort of neat and tidy and even, I was okay with it showing. I kind of went up one side and then down the other. The second side is a little bit, the stitches are a little bit smaller, so I may do the first side over again. I'm not sure. And then I sewed the buttons on because, these are handmade buttons. I don't want them, to fall off, or you lose one. You can't just run out and buy another one. They're, complete match set. So I sewed these on using one of the techniques in the Allison Smith couture dress, our couture techniques class, I think, in which you sew it on and then you kind of sew the stitches together kind of with a buttonhole stitch, so that it's like a bar tack over the stitches that you use to sew the button onto the front. You could only do that if you had like the woven underneath there, but if they feel really, really secure on there, and I don't know, I may want to like remove them if I'm going to wash the sweater or something. I don't know. I'll have to talk to Sheila about that, how she, what she recommends with her buttons. But with this, the way you put this on, once you cut through that bar tack, you just cut through that and then all the threads are released. So it's really easy to take the button off. So anyway, the yoke pattern is the chart from the Passerine hat by Erica Huser. I think that's right. And I just did this kind of little scallop edge. I'm really happy kind of with how it's centered and all of that. I did do short rows. I did some like in the back kind of before I started the color work, and then I slipped a couple in like at the bottom, like at this point and then at this point, and then there's a few at the very top. I prefer to, like, as much as possible, keep the distance between the collar and the color work to be even, like in the front and the back. So I mean, I don't want to just do all the short rows at the top above the color work, because then then there's this much space above the color work in the back, and then it's like none in the front. I don't know, I just like it to look a little more even. So I'm really happy how it turned out. I'm not wearing it yet, but hopefully with the warmer temperatures this week, I will get to wear it. If it gets up to, close to 40, I think it'll be warm. It's really warm sitting in here with it on. Oh, I should tell you some of the other features of it too. I put in it was basically, I used EPS, which is Elizabeth's percentage system. And it's a really easy way, and I think it's a really fun way of kind of making a sweater. And you don't need to like specifically follow a pattern. Kind of with this method, it does not have a lot of math, a little bit of arithmetic, but not like extreme. I'm sure you can do it because you're a knitter and you're smart. But basically you decide how big a round you want your sweater. So let's just say you want it 40 inches around, and then you do a little gauge, or you do a decent sized gauge swatch, so yet you can measure how many stitches per inch you have. So say you have 5 stitches to the inch and you want it 40 inches around, so it's like 40 times 5 is 200. So 200 is your K, your number, and then all the rest of everything is kind of a percentage of that number, Elizabeth's percentage system. And if you have one of the really old, like the older books that had this in, it has been sort of changed up a little bit kind of through the years. I think the new Knitting Workshop probably has the revised EPS, and then some of the newer books have it in there too. But I put in phony seams, which is a way for when it's folded, it folds kind of on a natural line there. And it doesn't do anything kind of for stabilizing it, but it's a nice kind of little feature. It looks like there's a seam in there. And that's what I use. And I did the short rows like I told you, and kind of, that was basic. I think anybody can do this. You can decide kind of what you want on the cuffs and whatever kind of ribbing or hem or like whatever you want. And it's a really fun way to sort of make a sweater that's different from everybody else's, which is kind of why I like to knit. Is I don't want to look just like everybody else. I don't want to have just the same thing that you could buy in a store. I was always like this. I don't know if it was a result of being a youngest child and I wanted to be different than the other ones, or if it was because I wore a uniform all the way through school so that I wanted to be different than dress different. I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of, and quickly, kind of how I did this sweater. So for show and tell, I just have one little thing that I actually showed it in the Christmas episode, but then I kind of cut that out, even of the version that was up for a short time. So anyway, I posted a picture of it on Instagram, but it's so cute. I thought I need to show it again so that everybody gets to see it. And this is a tee that I bought at Christmas. It is by Lupicia. I don't know, that's kind of which there. And it is a tea called Soleil Levant. And it's a green tea, but I just love, it's like a knitter's tea. There's like a little deer knitting a sock, and the hedgehogs are winding yarn, and he's got a little sock hanging from his antlers. It's just the sweetest little thing. And it's this is a green tea. Lupicia it's a Japanese tea company, but they have a U.S. kind of division. That there's a couple stores in the U.S. in San Francisco and L.A., I think, and then one in Hawaii. That's how I found them for the first time. And I've sort of switched over to just drinking green tea. I don't know if there's a black tea version of this, but it's Soleil Levant is French for sunrise, morning sun, something like that. So it's a really nice kind of fresh, crisp green tea with a little citrus in it. So I really enjoy it. If you have tried green tea and you didn't really like it, you thought it was bitter, I will venture to say that the water you used to brew it was probably too hot. I don't use any water over 170. They usually, like you look up, it usually says between 160 and 180. I don't go over 170 or else I can taste that little bitterness. I hope you all have a really nice week. I hope you get a thaw, January thaw, wherever you are, and whatever that means for you. And until I see you next time, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.